This episode of The Energy Show is sponsored by SolarCraft, providing solar, batteries, and heat pumps to Marin, Sonoma, and Napa counties for over 40 years. SolarCraft's 100% employee owners help our community step out of their carbon footprint and into saving money. Visit solarcraft.com.
So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, after you've had rooftop solar for about a year and you look up at your solar panels, you'll wonder, should I clean those things on the roof? Well, that's the question that we're going to delve into this Energy Show today. All right, there's really three related questions. The first question is, when should I clean my solar panels? The second question is, how should I clean my solar panels? And the third question is, who should do the cleaning? Should I do it myself, or should I hire a window cleaner, or should I get somebody who has some real professional skill cleaning solar panels? So here's the dilemma. There's lots of misinformation about panel cleaning out on the internet and among companies. And we'll try to do the best we can to answer the when to clean question mathematically. Because if you have monitoring, you can kind of tell when your output goes down, and you can kind of tell how much extra energy you're going to harvest after you clean. We'll answer the how to clean question based on experience we've had, tried all different ways of cleaning, spoken to lots of customers, lots of manufacturers, had lots of good and some bad experiences. And regarding those bad experiences, we're going to talk about especially how not to clean your solar panels. And then we also have some recommendations on as to whom you should get to clean your solar panels. Now, here are some before cleaning and after cleaning pictures of solar panels, just to get you an idea. But first, even if your solar panels have been up for only a week, when you look at them closely, they'll look a little bit dirty. And if mine looked really dirty from the ground. So looks from the ground are deceiving because you're looking at these things from a very oblique angle, and they really look pretty dirty. But surprisingly, photons can get through a lot of the dirt. Not filthy, but a little bit of dirt film. You might see a 5 or 6% reduction in output. Not so bad. So I think it's very helpful just to start off with an understanding of how solar panels get dirty. Obviously, the most common way is from wind-blown dust. Dusty areas like farms, dirt roads, urban areas, you're going to get faster panel soiling than in other areas. In the spring, there's a lot of pollen accumulation. We notice here in California, it's really bad around April and May. There's this kind of green tint. It's green tint on the solar panels. It's green tint on your car. It's kind of everywhere. And that's most of it usually rinses off in the rain if you're in an area where it rains. But if you're in a dry area, like here in California, you need to somehow wash that off because it's just going to accumulate. And then the third way that panels get dirty is usually from some kind of debris, sometimes leaves, but those blow off. But more often it's bird. You get bird poop on the solar panels. Usually not too bad because it's very localized. And unless your name is Hitchcock and you live in Bodega Bay, the bird soiling on solar panels isn't going to be too bad, maybe just annoying. So that's something pretty easy to just fix. Just go up there and wash it off manually. Now, what happens when solar panels get dirty? Well, obviously, the output of the system is going to decline. And that annual decline is really easy to see if you have monitoring. Here's a picture of the kilowatt hour output decline on a system that's been up on a roof for about 5 years. First year had the highest output. The output was down in the second year. The output was down again in the third year. And then panels were cleaned after that third year. The output went up slightly. It didn't come up all the way, but it definitely came up. Generally, you're going to see the biggest drop-offs in the first 3 years. If you're in a really dusty area like a farm, it's going to continue to get worse. And you have to be careful when you're interpreting this data because there's some fluctuation seasonal. Sometimes you have a very cloudy summer. Sometimes there may be a winter where there's a lot of snow, obviously not here in California. And then the temperature and the rain is going to vary. So that's going to have an effect on the soiling on the panels. If it's raining, you're going to get more often cleaning those off. If the temperature is really high in a particular month, bizarrely, the output of solar panels goes down more when it's hot rather than when it's cold. And on top of the expected gradual efficiency loss that you get with panels, and it's about 0.5% a year, the soiling is going to be in addition to that. So systems will typically degrade. Some manufacturers say 0.25% a year, some say 0.5%, but it's just going to continue to go down. It's just a general, all the components in the system basically get a little tired. Okay, now let's take a look at another factor which is really important, which is the distribution of the dirt on the solar panels. Now, when you get dust and soiling like that happening on a solar panel, it happens over the whole solar panel pretty uniformly. You get this very fine layer of dust. The longer it is between cleanings, the worse that dust is. But then what happens is there's this kind of like gloppy, dirty mud that tends to accumulate on the bottom of the solar panels, towards the bottom, and really bad on the last bottom row or so. I've seen systems, it's actually pretty common. People don't clean it at all, especially on panels that are very low slope, flat panels, for example. You actually get moss and weeds, moss growing on the panels and weeds kind of cropping up from between the panels. That's on a very filthy roof. But what's interesting, and I've observed this over the years, and I finally figured out what happens is when you look at solar panels that haven't been cleaned in a while, you'll notice that the top half of the solar panels are pretty clean, and the bottom half are dusty, and the real bottom, the last row of solar cells, is really bad. That is because dew collects on solar panels at night. The solar panels are cold, there's some humidity in the morning, that dew accumulates on the panels, and it kind of runs down the solar panel, but by the time it gets halfway down, it kind of dries out, and that's where all the dirt accumulates. But it's bad because it can knock out the performance of the solar cells at the bottom of the panel, and even though you may only be shading one row of panels by 25%, it could knock out the performance of everything in that string by a lot. That's one of the reasons why some of the newer solar panels have split arrangements of cells. They're really designed to make sure that this effect of dirt at the bottom isn't as severe. And it really actually minimizes degradation. It depends on how the solar panels are installed. It depends on how often they're cleaned. But there's some things that the manufacturers are doing that's quite clever to avoid some of the impact of this soiling problems. Now, it has also an impact of the kind of inverters you have with the system, whether you have a string inverter where everything's in a string, you have optimizers where they're also in a string, you have microinverters where they're all independent. But what's interesting is that since the soiling happens uniformly across a whole system, the type of inverters you have usually doesn't have a really big impact. Unless one panel is really, really badly soiled, in which case a pure string inverter with no optimization that has one bad panel on a string, they may really be affected. Now, I used to think that a really hard rain was good. And obviously that hard rain is good to get the panels clean. Light rain isn't going to do it. But you have this stubborn dirt and sap at the bottom of solar panels. You see this on the East Coast where you kind of get regular thunderstorms. That doesn't come off even in a downpour. It's that kind of dirt at the bottom of each solar panel is really going to need to be scrubbed off. There's just no avoiding it. Okay, now here are some factors that affect when you should clean your solar panels. I kind of looked at things mathematically as long as we have the data, taking into account the output of the system before cleaning and after cleaning. And also under what general circumstances. So don't even look at the monitoring, but see in what areas, what circumstances does it mean that you should clean more often. Now, first, places where it doesn't rain and you're not going to get any cleaning from rain, like the desert, like California, you're going to want to clean more often. Places where it's very sunny, like the southern part of the U.S., Florida, California, Texas, you're going to lose more energy when the panels are dirty than if you're in a more northern area where there's just not as much sun. Bigger systems, you're going to want to clean those more often because it's generally more cost effective on a per panel basis to clean a really big array, and you might as well get those savings. Now, it depends on the tilt angle of the solar panel. If the solar panels are steep, the rain will wash off that soiling faster. Maybe even the dew is going to wash that soiling off. But if the panels are 20% tilt, which is 20-25% tilt, which is the tilt angle in most of the U.S., you're going to get more dirt accumulation. And the worst is when solar panels are installed completely flat. And sometimes people have flat roofs. They're membrane roofs, pretty good roofs. They're sealed. I've seen a lot of systems where the solar panels were installed completely flat. Now, it's interesting. that if you put the panels on flat and there's no space between the panels, you can get more solar panels on that roof. And I think that's why some installers like, screw it, we're not going to bother tilting them. And that's going to be more work with a tilt-up rack, and we can't put as many panels on there. The problem is when they're completely flat, they get dirty really fast. There's no place for the mud and the debris to go, and they just kind of puddles. So you always want to make sure those solar panels are tilted. And we've been to a number of projects where they're flat, and we kind of have to go back because the installer cut corners and put it on a tilt rack, maybe a 5 or 10% tilt, so that they run cleaner. And also, you're going to collect more energy per solar panel if the panels are tilted towards the south rather than if they're completely flat. So basically, you can look at these economics on the energy savings and the cost of the cleaning when you think about when you should clean. Okay, so this kind of amazes me, and I'm looking at all the different recommendations around the internet and company manuals and warranty agreements, whatever, about how to clean. There's a lot of really bad cleaning advice out there. Now, the internet's a great thing, but it also kind of collects and focuses bad information. And, I don't really know how to change that. Maybe ChatGPT or Google AI isn't listening to our podcast, but there's a lot of bad advice out there. I'll give you some examples. So Clean Technica says you don't need to clean your solar panels. That's just flat out wrong. Maybe in some areas you don't, but if you just look at the data and you look at the cost to clean the solar panels, you save money by cleaning your solar panels. Several websites recommend cleaning once or twice a year. I mean, I typed into Google AI before I did the podcast, and Google AI says, in general, you should clean your solar panels at least once or twice a year, depending on your location and the amount of debris accumulating on them. Well, that's good advice if you're OCD or if you have the time and you're not afraid of heights to do it yourself that often. But if you're paying somebody to professionally clean it, there's a cost involved. Not going to make sense to clean them twice a year in general. I feel like there was a way to put Google AI chatbot on the roof and see if it's afraid of heights and see if it actually wants to go up there twice a year. Another bad advice, really bad advice. Use tap water to clean the panels. Wrong. There's minerals in tap water. It's called hard water, and that will stain your panels. Those minerals precipitate out when the water dries, and that is white film on there, and that's reflective, and so photons don't get through that. It's like when you park your car on a lawn or near a lawn, and there's a sprinkler that sprays on the side of your car, you get white spots or film on the car. The same white spots and film is going to show up on your solar panels, and that's going to degrade the system and create even a bigger problem. We'll talk about that later. Another website called Energy Matters says clean from the ground using a hose. Now, back in 2001, 2002, when I started, I was like, man, maybe I'll try that. But I've never encountered a system that could be cleaned properly from the ground with the hose. It's worse than a heavy rain. The tap water from the hose often has minerals that will stain your panels. So do not even think about using just plain hose water unless you have treated soft water. You have a water purifier, water softener, and you know that water's soft. There's not a lot of minerals in there. And that's still not going to be able to brush off the caked on dirt that usually kind of sticks on the panels at the bottom. Google did a study. I'm not exactly sure who did this study or how. It just says Google. Google says, if flat, clean regularly. If tilted, don't bother. It's not really that binary. Yeah, if it's flat, you want to clean at least once a year, get that mud off. If it's tilted, you still have to get it cleaned. Tilted panels still need cleaning. You can just see, if you take a look at the soiling pattern on panels, you'll know. So our advice as a solar and battery contractor, we've been cleaning solar panels since 2001. And unfortunately, what I learned pretty quickly is cleaning solar panels is a break-even business at best. We do it as a service to our customers. It's very hard to make that a profitable project, profitable task, profitable service, because we want to do it right. It requires the right equipment. It requires insurance. It requires rooftop safety anchors. We're following OSHA safety procedures, and we just want to do it that way, and we do a good job. And I would say most other solar contractors that do cleaning have their act together and obey those OSHA rules, and they're going to do it carefully. It's not like just washing windows you can do from the ground. The video that you're seeing over here is how we clean solar panels with a deionized water filtration system. And that's basically the best way that we found so far to do it. There's no drones that can kind of fly over the house and clean it. You got to just use the right kind of materials, use the right water, and scrub that soiling off the bottom of the panels. Now let's take a look to see what happens from actual data before and after solar panels were cleaned. So in this example, The system was brand new in the first year, and the first year output was 18,880 kilowatt hours. Now, the output kind of on a per day basis went down over the year because the panels gradually got soiled, but that was the first full year of operation. By the third year, that output had gone down to 16,597 kilowatt hours, down by 12%. That's pretty typical considering average soiling, average rain, things like that. We had some rain, but the output went down 12%. And that was on top of what we had expected the output to go down by about 4% in the very first year. So it's really easy to kind of get that data from a monitoring system if you have system level monitoring, which almost everybody has. Now, the next thing is kind of interesting to look at the monitoring data in the days before the cleaning was done and the days after the cleaning was done. And as long as the weather and the sun intensity was basically the same before and after, you can kind of get some data out of that. So looking at this data, after the cleaning, the output went up by 13%, average over several days. Hooray, that's great. But as I mentioned, the panels will very quickly become 2-3%, maybe 4% soiled again. So it's reasonable after a cleaning to expect the output over the next 3 years to increase by 5 or 10% over that time. And then you're going to save money. So that 5 or 10% increase would generate an additional 900 kilowatt hours per year. And at an average price, and this is high for California, but an average price of 50 cents a kilowatt hour, that would save $450 a year. So you save a lot of money in California. If you were to do this in a location where electricity rates were much lower, say 25 cents a kilowatt hour, you'd save $225 a year. That's how much you save. Now let's look at how much it costs to clean those panels. So in this example, 40 panels cost $400 to clean. So break even in the very first year. And then you save a little bit the next year, a little bit less in the third year, and then you got to clean again. If we were to do this cleaning in Florida, that cleaning cost might only be $200 per year. But then again, the electricity rate is a lot lower, and you're still going to see a good break even in the first and second year. Now, this is for residential systems. If you're looking at commercial systems, the same considerations generally apply, except there's a lot more solar panels. You want to still, with those systems, clean professionally in dry, dusty areas. And the company that installed that commercial system or utility scale system, they know this cleaning backwards and forwards. They're going through the monitoring all the time. And they're basically looking at it very carefully and saying, under these conditions, we want to clean. And they have very automated, large-scale equipment using deionized water, sometimes brushes, and even special trucks that do this very, very efficiently, kind of like a moving car wash. So commercial systems, the numbers are even more important to look at, and you can save even more. Okay, so we talked about when. Now let's talk about how you should clean the solar panels. So the first thing, number one, always take safety into account. It's slippery. We had one of our very first injuries at Cinnamon Energy Systems, a while ago, because the trained person that was cleaning the solar panels slipped coming down the ladder. Everything else was good, but he broke his foot climbing down the ladder. So safety is always first. Now, when you come to how they should be cleaned, this is where, we talked about this conflicting and often incorrect advice. Google AI. To properly clean solar panels, rinse with a garden hose using soft, non-abrasive sponge or cloth. We're not cleaning plexiglass or anything that's easy to scratch. Glass is very, very hard, and it's not going to scratch. And absolutely should not rinse with a garden hose. So Google AI, 2 strikes against you. Don't use a garden hose. It's going to create, you're going to get those minerals. And a soft cloth is not going to get rid of that soiling. You could use up with a plastic brush with bristles. That's okay. Don't super scrub it, but those plastic bristles are not going to scratch the glass in any meaningful way. So we talked about the basic points. Safety first. Be careful on the roof. Never, ever walk on the panels, and be very careful because when you're cleaning, there's water up there. It's going to be even more slippery. When you're doing the cleaning, turn the solar and the battery system off. Otherwise, you're going to have some live wires on the roof, and there's water up there, and everything should be fine. All the conduit and all the wiring should be safe. But just in case, you want to turn that off. Now, we talked about the fact that solar panels, they're made of tempered glass. So if a stick or something, small falls on it, even a golf ball, it's not going to crack. And glass is a very hard surface. So don't worry about, you should consider which we do, use a brush with plastic bristles or something else. Don't use wire bristles. That's not a good idea. Now, some of the older solar panels, and people aren't doing this anymore because it didn't work out, but they have anti-reflective coatings on the panels that actually helped reflect the bad wavelengths from the sun and actually help absorb even more. But these anti-reflective or AR coatings, they had a tendency to wear off. They're no longer commonly used. But on those panels, these older panels, if you used a brush, that would accelerate the wearing off of those coatings. It theoretically would improve the efficiency. As far as the most important material to use deionized water. That's water that's been specially treated so that all the minerals were removed. And it cleans very, very effectively. It's kind of almost like soapy water, but there's no soap in it. If you don't have deionized water and you're doing this yourself, tap water from a hose in a bucket is okay. But don't rinse the panels too much. What we would do typically when I used to clean my panels ages ago, I'd wet the panels with water and detergent. So you use a car wash detergent or something like that, something soft, or, Dove or something that you use in the kitchen. And then scrub it with a soft brush, hose off the soap and the dirt, squeegee all the excess water off. So if you squeegee that water off, then there's no way for the minerals to accumulate when the water evaporates. If you don't have a squeegee, what you could also do is just give it a very light soapy wash. So you end up with a soap film on there, but that's not going to allow the dirt to accumulate and the minerals to accumulate. Then give it a very light rinse. Maybe leave a little bit of detergent film on there. Don't wash it off very thoroughly, because if you're just washing it off with water, you're going to end up with plain water on there, hard water on there. When that water dries, you're going to get spots. So, backing up, most important, never just hose the panels off without using deionized water or some kind of water with detergent. And I just think back, this goes back over 20 years. One of our customers ruined a set of solar panels by cleaning with a hose. And this customer was in Fresno, and I remember getting this anecdote from the customer. When I hosed my panels off, it was a hot day in Fresno, not unusual. When I hosed my panels off, the output of the system immediately went up. So instantly thinking, clean solar panels, higher output. The reason why the output went up is that cooler solar panels generate more power, not that they were slightly cleaner. And this customer had also kind of regularly cleaned these solar panels, and the panels were very high-performance panels with this stippled glass coating on it. So the finish was stippled, a textured coating. And the minerals accumulated in that texture, and we could never, even scrubbing that glass off with trisodium phosphate, we could never get that mineral film off. Essentially, those panels were kind of permanently damaged. All right, so now let's just go back to, we talked about the when, we talked about the how. Let's talk about who should clean your solar panels. So simple advice, if you do it yourself and you're following the instructions that we talked about here, or if you have a window cleaning company that is skilled up on the roof, they're following the safety procedures that we recommend you do, then yeah, they might do an okay job. Some solar contractors who provide maintenance services, basically the ones that are answering the phone that have extra staff to do this, they also do the cleaning. They'll do it professionally. Ideally, it's the installer that put your system in. And they also can do a system check when they're there. So they're looking for things like, over the years, maybe a wire loosened or connections are loosened, or there's debris accumulated around inverters. I noticed my inverters, somehow they attract spider webs. And that's going to generally affect the heat performance of the system. Making sure that all the equipment is still properly grounded. Sometimes the grounding wire comes off. And the contractor should confirm the monitoring to make sure that the monitoring is working, which is the most common problem with systems. And also just to check to see if there's debris under the panel. So if there's a little bit of debris, that's something that the cleaning company could do. There's situations that we've seen where there's actually birds' nests or squirrels' nests under the panels. That's a lot of work to take out. The panels have to be lifted. The debris and the animals have to be carefully removed. We recently took out some baby squirrels and put them down near a tree. And then if you are having critters under there, there's something called critter guards that will pretty typically put around the perimeter of the array so that doesn't happen. Okay, so simple advice. It can be done do it yourself. You find a window cleaner, but I recommend finding your solar contractor to do it. To wrap up, be considerate of the poor photons that have just completed a 92 million mile journey from that fusion reactor at the sun. If your panels are dirty, you are causing trillions of premature photonic deaths when they collide with dirt molecules on your solar panels. So I beg of you, please, give these photons the chance to knock an electron loose from an eager semiconductor. instead of being converted to heat and banished to quantum hell. That's what happens when a photon hits dirt and dust. Not only will you save these valiant photons, but you'll also save money because you'll get many more kilowatt hours of electrons and electricity from your rooftop solar system every year. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can go to our website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.
This episode of The Energy Show was sponsored by SolarCraft, providing solar, batteries, and heat pumps to Marin, Sonoma, and Napa counties for over 40 years. SolarCraft's 100% employee owners help our community step out of their carbon footprint and into saving money. Visit solarcraft.com.